Do we have here? All by myself. Alrighty. What else can we do in here? Alright, let me try to play with this for a minute. Alrighty. Alrighty. What to do? Oh, hello.
Huh? Can you hear me, Tiger?
I can, yep.
It's only letting me do audio. That's depressing.
Well, that don't make any sense. Do you want to jump out and then I'll try to re-invite you?
Yeah, let's try that.
Okay.
Ah, there we go.
I can see you now. It's a weird though. It's the screen is different than it usually is.
I'm not sure. Every time I've ever done it, it's always had the guest down in the bottom part too. So I'm not sure if there's a different way to do it or if that's just the normal way.
I'm used to it being side by side.
I wonder if it's got to do maybe there's a host versus an invite, maybe.
Maybe. So what I'll do is you hop out and then you send the request to me and see if that changes it.
Let's see. I wonder if that right there. No, that's not what I want. How interesting. Stop that.
Okay, cool.
No, I guess that maybe it's part of the new update that they just rolled out.
Ah, the wonderful world of technology.
Because even when your invite came through, it was different than they were the last interview I did with somebody.
How weird.
Yeah, it's strange. It didn't pop up. I actually had to go down into multi-guest and accept it from there.
Huh. I mean, this works.
Yeah.
I don't mind a tiny face.
No, that's cool, man. How's your day going?
Pretty good. I gave blood for the first time today. And so in the past, I mean, if you've seen any of like my stuff on my Facebook or even on TikTok, like 3 years ago, I was 410 pounds. And so
Okay.
when I had my appendix or my gallbladder removed, they tried to stick me for an IV, and I said, "Good luck. I have rolling vein syndrome." The nurse is like, "That's a myth. You just have fat on your arms." I was like, I appreciate that. I was like, the honesty
Wow.
is, I love it. So now, 165 pounds down, this lady breaks out a pencil and she's like, "I'm going to stab you with this." And so she slams this harpoon into my arm, hits it on the first shot, no problem. And it was great. I mean, so
I saw your Facebook post and I had liked it, and I was curious what the story was behind that, being the first time and everything. So, oh,
it
that's
was.
pretty cool.
Yeah. And see, I'm on testosterone injections, like I'm on hormone therapy because my testosterone's jacked up really bad. And
Okay.
a lot of places actually won't let you give blood if you're on testosterone injections. Luckily,
Oh,
these guys did, but apparently there's something to do with the plasma. So your plasma has to be completely separated because the testosterone in your plasma can actually kill infants, and that's what they use plasma for. Is they'll give it to infants who need it. So I have to be labeled, and it's got to be separated, and all kind of different stuff. So it was an
oh,
interesting experience.
that's interesting. So I had given blood in the past. It wasn't a big deal. I certainly don't like needles at all, but
Yeah.
I would still do it on occasion. And then my wife and I happened to be out like shopping like 6 months ago, and there just happened to be a little bus, right? The little blood drive buses. And I said, you know what? I haven't done this in a long time. Let me go do it. And everything was fine. And then like halfway through, I guess like my blood sugar crashed, and all of a sudden I just felt really terrible in the
Right.
middle of it, and I was about to faint and pass out, and it was a horrible. And so I'm definitely pro people giving blood, but man, it was not a fun trip for me the last time around. So I was like, it might be a little while before I do that again.
All the nurses, they were like, "Did you eat well today?" And I was like, "No, I intermittent fast through my days and only eat one meal a day." And the wave of looks I got across that entire bus was like, "Are you sure you want to do this after
Yeah.
not eating?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be fine." They're like, "Okay, well, if you faint, we're just warning you ahead of time." And so about halfway through, I'm like, "So at what point am I gonna feel faint if I'm going to?" They're like, "We'll know it before you do because your whole face will just
Yep.
drain of color."
Hmm.
But I was fine. I was great. We set up. I was joking with them and talking with them, and they were talking about my pretty curly hair. So it was great.
I think the reason that mine was, and this is what they told me afterwards. So the place that I went, they actually would do the plasma as well, and most
Yeah,
places don't. And they're like, it
right.
was probably just more than what you were accustomed to. And they're like, that's probably why your blood sugar dropped so low. Because I had never had a problem before. I was like, well, I'm also a little older now too, so I mean, it could be that. But yeah, no, that's cool. I'm glad that worked out well for you today.
You
So
can't be that
awesome.
old. You're maybe what, early 30s at most.
Oh man, I wish. No, I'm 40, man. I appreciate that, though. I'll take the compliment all day long. So, you
If it
know,
makes you feel any better, I'm horrible at judging age.
oh, I'm trying to grow out this thing here. I don't have a cool beard like you yet. I'm trying. I have a throat beard, and I was joking with my wife a couple weeks ago, and I said, baby, is my hair turning more blonde down here? She said, baby, that ain't blonde. That's gray. So that's our little joke now. The new blonde hair and the beard. So, yeah.
I've,
Well,
I've I've spent many years sculpting mine to the point where it is now, so I get it.
yeah, I hear you. Well, my wife has never wanted me to do it before, so I've never gone more than like a month without shaving. And
Right.
it's like it grows in patches. And so I finally was like, you know what? Heck with it. I'm 40. I need to see if I can even grow a real beard, like a real boy. So I figured I'd give it a shot.
So great. So I have a spot right here. When me and my wife were dating, it was one day after church, and we just fell asleep, or I fell asleep. She decides to come over and starts ripping my peach fuzz out of my face right here. And to this day, over almost like 11, 13 years later, I have a bald patch still right there where she's permanently scarred my face.
Oh wow, that's wild.
It sucks because I've tried like everything to try and grow that spot in. So no matter what happens, I'm screwed. She has a permanent mark on my face right there.
Oh man, that's wild. I've never heard of that before. You know, when I was in the military a long time ago, and they're like, you know, don't worry, you can't grow a beard, but you know, you're shaving every day. Oh, it'll be fine. No, fake news, man. That did not happen. So,
He
oh,
said, "Dude, that's great."
oh, man. So I do appreciate you joining me tonight.
Oh yeah,
Hopefully, some people come in and get to hang out with us. And so you've done these before, right? Because you do these interviews on occasion, so you know that like the chats are split and everything like that,
right,
right?
right. Yeah,
Okay, cool. So if you know the deal, if you get like questions and comments on your side and you want us to slow down and field those, that's fine. You know, we'll just kind of play that by ear. Do
yeah.
appreciate you coming on tonight.
Oh yeah,
Really
no
would
problem.
love to just hear about starting out. You write fantasy. It's kind of Arthurian, right? Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So
It's an author in retailing. Yeah.
awesome, awesome. So I guess before we get into that, how did you get into writing?
So, like most people, I guess it's something I've always wanted to do. In middle school, and I still have this, by the way. In middle school, I carried around a 1 inch, 3 ring loose leaf notebook, a binder, and in that I wrote on the loose leaf notebook paper. It was a X-Men ripoff that if I attempted to publish would get me sued by Marvel. But that's it ended up being almost like a journal for me. So I was the main character, or the character who I said was me. And I used it to, like, when I had crushes on people, I would write in a new character, and my character would have a crush on that person, and it would like, and so it was when something traumatic happened in my life, something traumatic would happen to the character. So it became a way for me
Oh,
to do that, and from then I've just like I wrote all through high school, and when me and my wife started dating, I was still kind of writing then. And then I got out of it. I got into a job as a chicken farmer. I was actually for you may know who they are, Roseacre Farms. They're actually the second largest egg producer in the country, right next to Cal, Maine. But I've raised baby chickens for about 4 years, and I was working like 60 hours a week, so I didn't write anything. And then finally, I started back writing and come up with a concept, sent it out to agents, got rejected, 30 to 40 times, something like that. And
okay.
we found self publishing, and then got into a little bit more of that. And now I've been in a new job for about, I think I'll be in there 5 years as of this year, as of actually within a few weeks. And that's where my main writing has come from. Now that I have a job that doesn't demand as much, I have a nice, pretty desk, so I'm able to write whenever I want now.
Oh, that's awesome. So now we touched on before, it's Arthurian fantasy. For
Yeah.
somebody who maybe doesn't know really what that subgenre is, break it down for us.
So basically, it's any tale of the tale of King Arthur, and King Arthur has a lot of different sub stories to it. You've got the knights themselves, the Holy Grail, Lady of the Lake. I mean, there's a bunch to it. And so, kind of the way it got started, I was watching Forged in Fire actually, and I'm a hobby blacksmith, or I was before I
Oh,
sold a lot of stuff. And so I was watching the show, and they were forging one of these. Actually, they were forging a get a better shot of it. They were forging a Zweihander, and
yep.
so as I'm sitting there watching it, looking at this sword, I'm like, this sword deserves a spotlight. And so that's kind of why I came up with the concept of having that plus Excalibur sword. And I did the research. They research enthusiasts, historians do not actually know if King Arthur was real or not. They're not 100, like across the board. You've got about 50% say he was a real person, 50% say no, he's made up fairy tale. So I took that and I ran with it. you're able to do your own stuff with ideas that aren't concrete. So that was basically it. You know, and not to give, I mean, I probably could give spoilers. The book's been out for 2 years now, but a lot of people don't know that while Excalibur is the main sword, you know, that's King Arthur's sword.
Yep.
There's also two more swords that nobody knows about. It's Clarent and Caliburn, and nobody really has ever really heard of these swords. So the idea behind it was Clarent was King Uther's sword, Arthur's father.
Okay.
Caliburn was Arthur's sword, but it was broken in battle. It was reforged and made magical by the Lady of the Lake, and therefore she gave it to King Arthur, and at that point it was Excalibur. So you've
Okay.
got that story, and then the Sword in the Stone story, which was Excalibur being pulled from the stone.
Yep.
So
That's awesome.
I used both swords in mine. I made Clarent Excalibur, or Caliburn is Excalibur, and in my book, Clarent becomes Rycaliber, which is the two-handed sword that I used off of Forged in Fire, and that was kind of how it all came to shape.
So it was Uther Pendragon's sword, right? Did I get the name right?
That's correct.
I like the Arthurian legends, but I'm not super up to speed on all of them. Just making sure I'm getting the character right. Now, so without too many spoilers, well, first off, how do you pronounce the series? Because I tried about 4 different ways to pronounce it, and I figured I was still butchering it. So,
Primus Vipris.
Primus Vipris.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
Latin for first viper.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't even think Latin. Oh, that's fantastic. So in Primus Vipris, who are the from your retelling? Who are the main characters? Who are the protagonists here?
So Oliver Lockhart and his twin brother Roland Lockhart. They are the two wielders of the swords.
Okay. So is this just like give me the everything that every author hates to do. Give me the, 30-second elevator pitch on this series.
Yeah. So Oliver is a archaeologist. He's been shunned by the archaeology community because he spent his whole life saying Excalibur was real. Well, when he stumbles upon clues that lead him to Excalibur, he goes to his brother Roland, and they used to play Knights and Dragons as kids. And so he tells Roland, "Look, I know where it is. Let's go together." Roland, who is an esteemed lawyer within his law practice, is about to be made partner. He's in the middle of an important trial. He says, "No, I can't go with you. This is important. I'll make partner." Well, a disaster happens, and Roland actually gets fired as partner. And so he goes with Oliver to find Excalibur. And when they do, they find out that these swords are actually the key to Camelot. And they open up a portal into Camelot when they pull the swords and unknowingly unleash a reptilian apocalypse on the world when it happens.
On the world of Camelot.
No, our world.
Oh, okay. So you have it's 2 books in the series right now. Are there going to be more books in that series?
It's currently planned for a minimum of 7, and potentially as many as 12. That's what I'm looking at right now.
Now, which age range are you? Because there's so many, man. I tend to inundated with the different age ranges within genres
Right.
now. Is this adult? Is it new adult? YA? Where do you? I mean, it sounds like the characters are grown. So
They are.
okay.
It's definitely adult. And new adult deals with a very risque stuff that goes on within the genre.
Yeah.
I'm not leaning towards that with these books. I mean, there is some slight romance planned, but nothing to that level. But it is definitely adult. I'd say 22 to about 40 is, and surprisingly enough, a good amount of my devoted readers are all women, which I wasn't expecting at all.
Me too. It blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind. It's fantastic, but it is not at all what I expected. But you bring up a really good point, though, about the genres and kind of the expectations within the genre. So it's so fascinating to me that and I don't want to turn this into a political thing, but in both new adult and even in YA now, how much it's not just romance, but even, steamy romance, if you
Yep.
will, for not trying to, get into too much particulars here. But, if like my oldest kid, my daughter is 13 now, she'd be reading middle grade, right?
Right.
But very soon she'd be transitioning into YA. I don't want her reading YA with a lot of the common themes and elements that are pervasive throughout the genre now. So I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you probably. I write adult. I do have one series that's more like one of the characters is coming of age, so it's kind of borderline new adult, young adult, but with adult themes because it
Right.
doesn't really fit in either place. So
Yeah,
has that been a
I'm kind
challenge
of
for you?
there. Yeah, it is. And it's actually one of the reasons why I'm currently, I had a muse hit. And normally when a muse hits, a lot of times I try to ignore it because your muse can pull you away from your current works in progress. This one hit me like a Mack truck. I couldn't get away from it. I had to do something. So it ended up drawing me, and it's TikTok's fault, by the way. I'm just going to put this out here. With all the steamy authors that are on TikTok, it's TikTok's fault, without a doubt. Because I wasn't writing anything like this. I have very little experience in writing. Shut up. I know it was your fault too. It's my wife over there. Because she's been pushing me to write stuff like this for years. And I've avoided it because it wasn't nothing I wanted to get into. I definitely didn't want to go into the world of smut or like heavy erotica. And I knew I didn't want to do that. So this muse kind of hit and I followed it, and now I'm working on a fantasy romance with some decent steam. I mean, nothing too crazy. But
Right.
again, it goes back to, and it's actually a big topic on Book Talk that I've seen where a lot of authors are talking about how you've got this middle grade of 13, 14, 15 with a lot of heavy scenes in them. I mean, and even I saw where one lady was talking about A Court of Thorns and Roses was in her public library under the teen category. And she's like, this isn't where this belongs. She's like, there's some really heavy, steamy scenes. This does not belong here. But
Yeah.
because new adult is such a new genre, people don't know what to do with it. They don't know where
Right.
to put it. So
Right. It's a really fascinating point in my Demon Hunters trilogy. I definitely brought some of the romance in. And that's something my wife was like, she was supportive of it too, but there's like a little heat to it, but it's clean, right?
right.
So, and that's what I felt comfortable putting in there. I don't want to say wholesome like lame, right? Because that's usually synonymous for lame. But, there's some scenes that are a little steamy, but most everything is, off screen or whatever, and it's
Right.
not vulgar or anything. So it's tough, man. It really is, and that's really not the heart of what I write, anyways. So with this muse hitting and you writing this romance stuff, is this a completely separate work than your current one?
It will be, even to the point where I'll eventually get a pen name to write under because
Okay.
if you're doing big separate genres, you really got to keep the two author names separate. So this one will come out under a pen name when it's ready, and
Okay.
I'm not pushing this one. I mean, I am writing daily on it, but it'll be one of those things where I'll finish the whole series and put out the whole series at one time. I'm not pushing this one as hard as the other. Obviously, the next book in the Primus Viperus will be out next year. And I have a new first in series that I'm hoping will be out this year that deals in Egyptian mythology.
Okay.
And I buy weird stuff to
You had me at
but
Egyptian. So,
yeah. But hopefully that'll be out this year. My wife, who's my developmental editor slash beta reader slash tells me all the crap I've done wrong. She read through this one and she was like, "Here's the list of crap you did wrong. Let's fix it." So hopefully that one will be out later this year. But currently it doesn't have a release date. I think I announced it back a few weeks ago where I'm just gonna push it back and we'll see when it actually hits the press.
Now, we've talked a little bit about writing before. I know you do writing sprints and trying to
Right.
write regularly, like I do. Now, when you have a situation where you're trying to juggle all these different ideas, like most of us do, what's your process? Is it like, man, as soon as I finish this book, I need to rotate to another book, like to keep it fresh? Because I have a buddy who does that. He's my accountability
Right.
buddy, and he'll write like his thriller, and then he'll go back to fantasy, and then he'll just keep rotating to keep things
Okay.
fresh. Is that how you do it, or do you have a different approach?
So I found for me that changing my setting is actually a big player for me. So at work, because I have a desk, and I'm not at my desk all the time, but about 3 days out of my week, I have relatively slow days. I'm a customer service rep, so if for Kubota tractors, by the way, so if Kubota's not hard demanding anything, then a lot of my days are slow, waiting on them to see if something's going to happen, making sure things are flowing like they need to. So on those days, I'm able to write at my desk, and I'll write one book from there, and that'll be the book that I write at work. When I
Oh,
change settings and I come home, I'll change books. So the change in setting actually adjusts my mindset a little bit. I mean, that might be it might be just me, it might be one of my ticks, but it works. I don't know how to explain it.
well, no, that kind of makes sense. Like, have you read Chris Fox's 5,000 Words Per Hour? Have you read
Uh,
that book?
I have not.
So it's a free book, or at least it used to be free. You can get on his website, and that's what actually got me to doing writing sprints. Was I read that book and was like, man, I'm super slow. I can't keep waiting 3 years to put out a book. And
Right.
one of the things he talks about, I think he called it like a turtle enclosure or something. There was some term, but it's basically your writing habitat. And
Okay.
he's basically talking about how when you establish your writing habitat, which is the same space, the same equipment, the same time of day, if you can afford to do that, what it does is it impacts how your subconscious works. Which, when you're in that place, your subconscious eventually, once you've trained it, kind of like Pavlov's dog, it knows it's creativity time, it's writing time.
Right. Okay.
And so you
Yeah,
can
that makes sense.
train yourself. Yeah. And so one of the things he talks about is building that creative place for yourself. So if you've conditioned yourself to write a certain thing at work, and then you've conditioned yourself to write something else, I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. It's interesting
Yeah.
though.
I didn't think about it that way. I guess that is spot on, and it's something too. I actually haven't started doing writing sprints until probably just a few weeks ago. Actually, a lot of times I would go days without writing, potentially weeks without writing,
Yeah.
and when I did write, I would just sit down and kind of write what I felt. Like I'd go until I'm like, okay, that's enough, and then I'd move on. And so me and my wife were talking. I'd watched a couple TikToks on people doing riding sprints, and I was talking to her. She was like, "Why don't you try it?" She's like, "Just sit down, set a timer for 15 minutes." Actually, at the time it was 10 minutes. She said, "Write for 10 minutes and see how many words you get in." And so within 10 minutes, I was doing 500 words. So we bumped that up to 15, and now I do 750 words to 800 words in 15 minutes, and I do that on both the next book in the Primus Vipers series, as well as the fantasy romance I'm working on. So I'm getting in 750 words at least a day on both books.
Wow.
You know,
That is incredible.
well, see, I did an interview with golly, I've done so many. Eliza back a few weeks ago, and she was telling me she's a full time author. She was telling me how in a day she can get anywhere from 3 to 5,000 words in a day, and I'm just upwards into 6,000 words a day, and I'm just like I'm blown away because that to me is completely unfeasible. But then at the same time, last week I had some slow days at work, and then came home and I was hitting about 3,000 words in one of those days between work and home. And so I've never hit daily word counts like that before. So sprinting has opened up a whole new world of productivity for me that I didn't know I could do.
Yeah, it's changed my whole writing process for me. Um, I'm a lot slower than that. I'm nowhere in 15 minutes, I'm probably going to be getting like 300 words. Now, but that leads me to my next question though. For you, do you do a lot of plotting? Like, do you do intense plotting, or are you more of a pantser? So I'm guessing you're heavy on the plot side because you're able to crank out such high word count.
So I wasn't once upon a time. Once upon a time, I was heavy in pantsing because I've actually told people before when they ask me about my writing, my hands think for me. And I was like, my brain a lot of times turns off and my fingers just go. Well, that ended up leading me with a lot of consistency issues, a lot of plot issues, a lot of the first thing I cranked out and sent out to agents, I thought it was gold, like we all do when we first made something. It's fantastic. But it ended up just being a nice gold-plated piece of crap. So, so looking back now, I'm almost ashamed of it. But I've learned since then to start plotting, and I plot the story chapter by chapter. What's going to happen in this chapter, what's going to happen in this chapter. And I made a TikTok back a little while ago. Even now, I'm still a plotter. My characters go off and do whatever the crap they want. It drives me insane because I'm a plantser now. So I have my plot, but I leave room for whatever's going to happen. This
Yep.
fantasy romance, I was writing some scenes in it today, and stuff that I hadn't even planned. They just kind of hit me out of nowhere, and I messaged my wife what I was doing. She was like, "That's fantastic." She's like, "That's a great idea. Roll with that." She's like, "Why did you come up with that while we were plotting it?" I don't know. It just hit me. I don't
Yeah.
can't explain it, but I am heavy on plotting now. I'm still working on my character. I'm a very plot driven author, and it's something I'm working on
Okay.
because I've learned that a reader will put down a bad book, or a reader will put down a good book if it has bad characters, but they will
Yep.
read a bad book that has fantastic characters. So I'm working now on getting my characters better.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So I have like you talked about the muse striking, and I always have a number of ideas of things that I want to write that I can't. And I have
Right.
a particular series where I'm in the same boat where I'm actually like all the time between now and when I finish my current work in progress, I'm gonna be, oh hey, best chance, good to see you tonight. Um, so I'm going to be spending a lot of the time between now and the next, 4 months or whatever,
Right.
all developing the characters first. I have an idea of the plot, but building those characters, really complex characters, more so than I've done in any of my other, tons of
Right.
books. Because once you do that, it's the characters that people are going to remember forever. Right. So,
That's exactly right.
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome, man. I'm
So
kind
I
of
want to share with you um and something my wife's been helping me with. She gave me a chart, and I didn't really know. This has actually helped me a lot with figuring out my characters. And the chart was basically the description, the character's motivation or their goal, their conflict, and then their wound. Basically, what's wrong with them. And
yep.
then at the bottom of it, what will the major parts of the story do for them? And this chart has really helped me with my character development. And I'll tell
Okay.
you how bad I am at my characters. When I was writing the first book in my other series, Camelot's Reckoning, I was trying to figure out my characters, and then it hit me that one of my characters has White Knight syndrome. Basically, the other character lives in a world in his brother's shadow, and he doesn't want to be forgotten. It literally hit me so bad when I figured these characters out. I started crying, like I got emotional at how bad, how like it just like it was like a huge weight because I everything had clicked about these characters, and because I have White Knight syndrome too, like 100%. I will save you if it means me dying in the process. So when it hit me about these characters, it was a massive blow to because I'm a big girl anyway. I'm very sentimental. So it hit me, and I got just really emotional. Like I started crying, and my wife, she's like, what's wrong with you?" I was like, "They're such real people." So it was interesting to feel that. I'd never felt that before, being so plot driven.
When I was I wasn't super well read before I got into writing. I had read very casually.
Right.
Reading was something that I didn't naturally take to, so I didn't really read growing up. And so I read things like Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, Dragonlance, stuff like that, where a lot of times the characters aren't the most complex. A lot
Right.
of times they might be overpowered. They're always going to save the day. And so, like, that was kind of my framework when I first started writing. What I had to learn quickly is how to create complexity and depth. But I was
Mhm.
like, it's the train's already moving. like, like let's build this in. And so I think I've, it's my series. I have one that's short and one that's long. The long one, I've had plenty of time to work those
Right.
kinks out, but I've been there too, where they're just like, oh man, you don't want those cardboard cutouts, right? So,
Yeah.
but you have to learn it. You have to learn it.
And see, that was something. One of the things I ask when I do interviews, I do 2 a month, is I ask my guests, "What is your biggest weakness as an author?" Because if we can learn those weaknesses, obviously we can get stronger. And so, like you, I wasn't a big reader, but the stuff I did read, just to kind of, because my wife said my mirror for me, I read stuff like this.
The Three Musketeers. Okay. Okay.
I went on an escapade in high school with reading as many classics as I could. My favorite book of all time is The Count of Monte Cristo. Before high school, before I met my wife and started dating my wife, I didn't read a lick. I mean,
Right.
I was a junior in high school before I picked up a book. I didn't even know where my high school library was at all. And so she was a big reader. And so I started reading classics and I started reading The Count of Monte Cristo. The problem with classic novels is they're very passive. They're very they don't really get in depth on point of view much. So it's basically like I
Yep.
akin it to watching a movie. You know, the camera lens picks up everything. We pick up what everybody's seeing. We pick up what everybody's thinking. And nowadays, readers despise that. They will not read a book that reads from that omni point of view. So I had to retrain myself completely on how to write the way readers want now. So I understand that scope of reading books that are very older, that live in that, like you was talking about, the cardboard cutout where it's so very plot driven. I get
Yep.
that. I lived in that world where it was, the old style of writing that's just not acceptable anymore.
You bring up a great point about the classics. And fantasy is just as guilty with the classics, right? Of that point of view, that camera lens. And I was guilty of the same thing. My POV usage was a train wreck for the first couple books. The one book that I did well was by accident. I didn't even know what I was doing right. So when I was screwing up, I didn't know I was screwing up. And when I was doing it right, I didn't know. But I have a writer buddy of mine, Robert Mullen, who he did some beta reading for me. And he was like, bro, your point of view is a disaster. And but he helped me understand. But I was
Right.
sort of like my second or third book at that point. And so I still write like that whole series is still omni, but it's limited omni third person,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you're still getting closer to the one character, and I've really tried to make it clear so there's no head hopping anymore. But man, in my first book, and I've never gone back and fixed it or whatever, but I understood why people were like they had a hard time if they weren't accustomed to the sprawling epic. If that wasn't their genre that they were accustomed to and they jumped into it, some people had a hard time. It wasn't the most
Right.
accessible, I guess.
Right.
So now we talked about the things that we struggled with, but I want to know, what do you think are some of your best strengths in your writing? So let's focus on that.
So for me, oh God, that it's weird because I can pick out my weaknesses, like, I mean, without a problem. I know where my weaknesses are because when I'm editing, that's what I look for. Passive voice, I'm god awful at passive voice. I have a list, and I'll end up making a TikTok on it eventually. I have a list of about 20 words that I go through and do a search for because it's straight passive voice throughout the whole thing. And
Okay.
so I am god awful when it comes to that. And so that again, but that goes back to my roots in classic because classics are written straight up
Passive.
passive voice. I mean, it's
Yeah.
horrible. So I've learned to pick stuff like that out a little bit better. As far as my strengths go, oh god, you might have to ask my readers that question because I really
So that's a really good point. Like out of the reviews you have for your books that are out there now, the reviews that are really the ones that get you excited, is
right.
there any common themes that you see that readers are saying, "Man, I really like this about your book"?
Excuse me while I pull up my reviews on Amazon.
Oh, that's awesome. You know, about the while you're doing that, about the passive voice thing, I can relate because a lot of my career, I've had to do a lot of technical writing, which is an entirely different
Right.
breed of writing. And I'm not a technical writer by trade, but I've had to do tons of it in a lot of very technical fields and roles. It's all passive voice by default. So
Right.
between the classics and what I was doing for work, I all I wrote was passive voice. I didn't even know it. Right. So yeah,
Yep.
I get you there. So I'll have to when
So
you put out that video on words to eliminate, I'm gonna have to follow that, save it, bookmark it.
yeah, I didn't realize there's one thing I've noticed for me is a lot of began and a lot of begun. Like I use a lot of he began or he. The big one for me is like the senses. So if he sees something, if he feels something, if those right there are a lot of it because stop telling me he's about to do something. Stop telling me he's beginning to do something and just do it. Just
Yeah,
just do it. Don't tell me what he's feeling. Don't tell me what he's don't tell me he's seeing something. Tell me what he's seeing. I don't need to know that he's seeing it. I just need to know what he's seeing.
yeah,
And so a lot of my words are stuff like that. And there's filter words like my massive amount of crutch words that I possess. But to go back to your previous thing, according to this, go figure, a lot of my readers like the dialogue that I carry with my characters. I've
okay,
got some guys who he's comedic relief, so they really like the dialogue and they really like my descriptors. I had a guy who read it who lives. Part of the book takes place in Scotland. He lives in Scotland and he was like, I really don't know how you was able to describe Scotland so well without coming here. And I'm like, dude, Google Earth. I was like right up. I have visited Scotland without leaving my desk at home. I was like, Google Earth. He's like, bro, that's not even the point. You know stuff about Scotland I've never known, and I live here. I've lived here my whole life. I was like, man, authors are the best researchers on the planet. I was like, you give an author something they need to know, they will find every single thing they need to know about it. So when
it's
I
true.
was describing Scotland and the Highlands, and I even go into Loch Ness, he's like, man, I don't even know. Like you describe stuff so well, I don't even know how you did it. I was like, Google Earth, bro, Google Earth. I'm telling you, that's all I needed. And he
That's
was he
such
was
a
really pleased with it.
That's such an awesome compliment for that. So yeah, I had a situation to the research point, right? Where one of my books I was talking about basically somebody was dealing with symptoms of like a medical condition, right?
Yeah.
And I think it had to do with similar to migraines. I think that's what it was. And one of my like street team or my beta readers was like, "Do you suffer with this? I didn't know you suffered with this." And I'm like, "No, I don't. I just did a lot of research." And they're like, "Man, you nailed it." They're like, "I have dealt with this for years, and I'm like, it's Google, man. It's
Yes.
exactly what it is. So,
That's exactly right. My the Egyptian series I have coming out, I've got to put it in my acknowledgments. I reached out to a team of Egyptologists I found on Google, and the lead Egyptologist was great about answering the questions that I had. Even though I love Egyptology and everything that deals with it, she answered my questions without any problem. I mean, she was fantastic. I found her on Google. My cousins who are OR nurses in this same series, there's a part where like my guy flatlines, and so I needed some information on what they would give somebody who flatlines. Like what kind of stuff do you do to try and bring them back? So he sent me back this list of medications and stuff. Like what do we do when a dude flatlines? And so I mean, it's just reaching out and finding the information. Like I said, we're the greatest researchers ever, bar none. Not to mention, just a fun question. What is the craziest thing you've ever researched for your books? Like the thing that the FBI has you on a watch list for right now.
That is always a great question. Browser history is deleted. Let- I've definitely done a lot of like physical stuff, like
Right.
dehydration, like dying of thirst. What does that actually look like? A lot of things like that. Anatomy. If this
Yeah.
broke, what would happen? Different bones in the body. So probably nothing insane, but it's a lot of like trauma related. Like,
Right.
is this the right organ?
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
if they were put in this situation, what would happen as they were slowly dying of thirst type
Right.
of thing? How about
Right.
you?
So my most recent one was the smell of boiling blood. If it had
Oh,
a more distinct smell to it. And I also had to Google, which I'm not quite sure how people know this, what you feel when you're drowning. Like what happens? Because I know
okay.
from what I've heard, I guess drowning is extremely painful from what I've researched.
Oh,
And so in the
okay.
back of my head, I'm like, how do we know it's painful if you drowned? Like, how are we asking the people who drowned what it felt like?
It's an
And I
exit
guess,
survey.
yeah, that was wrong. Rate your experience on 1 to 10, 10 being the most uncomfortable. My wife's dying over there. Oh
Awesome.
God. But I mean, I guess if you bring them back, like if you resuscitate them, maybe they'll be like, "Look, you have no idea how painful that was. I'd never do it again." But that's kind of one of those things that the FBI is either looking at me wondering, is he drowning in boiling blood? So which,
And
by the
what does it
way,
smell like?
Dante's Inferno was a massive. Like I read Dante's Inferno in high school, and I don't know if you've ever read it, but one of the parts of hell is people. They're like neck deep in like a lake of boiling blood. That's like one of
Oh,
the levels of hell. And so if they apparently they like sink under and then they're like poked or pulled out or something like that. So in the back of my head, I'm like, what does boiling blood and how does that smell? There's got to be, because we all know what burning flesh smells like, right? I mean, if you've ever like my
yeah, I just
wife,
got done cooking some.
yeah, so wrong. Oh my god. So when we had our last kid, my wife got her tubes cauterized, and so I'm great, I'm fine. And there was the time before that, the nurse, he's like military guy, he was like 6, 7 feet tall. I mean, solid as a rock. And so he's sitting there at the head with me and my wife. He's like, "Hey, dude," and he elbows me. He said, "Your baby's about to be born. Check it out." And so I look up over the curtain, and the doctor has my child, and at the time he gives the child to the nurse. Then he takes my wife's uterus and squeezes it out. He wrings it out and then like shoves it back in her. And I look over at this nurse. I'm like, "Bro, what is wrong with you?" He's like, "That was cool, wasn't it?" what? What?
I,
But I make it through that no problem. And then they go to cauterize her tubes and all, and the smell of the burning like hits me, and the nurses are like, "Your whole face went white the whole time." And so that everybody knows what that smells like. It's like it's burned into your brain if you've ever smelled it. So I just knew there had to be something different about boiling blood, but apparently there's not. Boiling blood smells like regular blood, according to the people who has witnessed boiling blood for whatever reason.
I hope it's a pretty small group.
I would think so.
So, we have 3 kids, and I was able to be there for all of them. And I always told my wife, I said, I'll be there with you every step of the way, but I am not going to be at the business end of this transaction. So I will hold your hand. Yeah, we'll he, hoo, all that stuff will breathe together, but I don't want to be at the other end.
Well,
So
so you
she
had all
thinks I'm
three
a
of yours
punk.
naturally. All three of your kids were born naturally. Okay, all three of mine were C-sections. So they give her the epidural, and there is full-on surgery going on at the other end of this thing. And she's
Yeah.
looking up at me like, I'm great. I'm fine. She's like got a smile on her face while she's got a 7-inch gash at the bottom of her stomach, and they're like digging around her organs. I'm like, what kind of sorcery is going on here? She's like, I don't feel a thing. And they're sitting there jerking on her, and the whole table's moving. I'm like, you don't feel none of that? She says, no, I'm great. Like this is wild. This is the most insane. Like if you've never been there to see that all of this is going on, like there's blood everywhere and there's just cutting and sewing, and at the same time she's like, tell me a story. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
I'd rather
um,
smell burning blood. I'm just going to say.
I mean, it was the wildest thing ever. And then the dude's like, just check it out, look over the screen. That's the best pregnancy story I have, when I tell people about them wringing out her uterus and then shoves it back in her like a quarterback giving the running back the football, dude. I mean,
Oh,
he's just like,
man.
and that's it. That's like the end of the story. Like it's the wildest stuff I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, medicine has come a long way, my guy. A long way.
That's pretty wild. And it's pretty wild that the women can handle it. Yeah,
She was
it's
she was
crazy.
perfectly fine. She wasn't breaking a sweat at all. She's like, that numbing medicine's great. She's like, I don't feel anything. We should get some of this for the house. No.
Oh, man. My wife was great through ours. She had an epidural, I think, with the first one. And then I think she had a late epidural with the second one. And the third one she
Right.
did at home. Nothing. Completely
Wow.
natural. And I'm like, it's incredible. I don't even, my brain.
Yeah, she's a
So,
trooper. I mean, that's pretty crazy, because I'm gonna tell you something. I know there's a lot of manly men out in the world. I mean, there's a lot of real tough guys who can handle a lot. You show me one who can handle pushing a baby out of them, and I mean, because we get the cold and we're all down, like we're dead, just with like a bad cold. Make them force a child out of them, and then we'll have a real conversation. Because I'm not. I'll tap out. Shoot me. Kill me. Save the baby. I'm done.
so I, talking about pain, it is such a great topic to talk about with writing. So, a lot of writers, there's tons of memes out there, whether it's TikTok or Facebook or whatever, about just how much misery can they put their characters through. So, what is your thought process and kind of your approach to struggle and even pain for your protagonists? How do you approach that? What are your thoughts on that?
My utter goal, and my wife tells me this all the time. She says, and I got a reader who sent me a meme one time. She said, "You're the kind of author who sits down and has tea with Satan." I was like, "What do you mean?" She said, "You get me so in love with these characters, and then you put them through hell." I'm like, that's the point. In case you don't realize that, my goal is to like make you love these characters with your whole heart, and then forcefully rip them from your arms and make you feel as much pain as humanly possible. And she's just like, why would you do that to me? I was like, you see the look on your face right now, the virtual tear that's about to fall. That's the reason why. So I have no problem. I've been akin to George R. R. Martin by a lot of people, because folks are
Okay.
like, you have no problem. You'll kill the hell out of anybody. I was like, yeah, I will. It's like, I don't care. I'll kill a character. I don't care. I'll cut a limb. I'll lop off whatever I want to lop off. I'm not bothered by it at all. You start straying too far, and I will choke you. I don't care. I have no remorse for punishing my characters at all.
No, that's awesome. And I love the whole response of like the emotional connection and that visceral emotional response that the reader
Yep.
has. But it's more than that too, though, right? You and I both know that whether you're following the hero's journey or you're just kind of doing your own story, whether it's plot driven or whether it's character driven, the pain and the suffering has purpose. So what are your thoughts on that?
It reminds me, because I'm currently in my master's thesis class for creative writing. I'm in a master's class with Southern New Hampshire University. And during my bachelor's, I took a script writing class, and it's one of my professors told me something that's always sat with me. He said, every line that you write, every event that you write should have one purpose, and that is progressing your story. He said, if ever you read a line or you read an event or a scene that stalls your story for whatever reason, cut it. It has no purpose. So even if you're writing in some type of pain or some type of event that's going to fuel that later on, it should have a purpose. And I'll give you an idea, not to get into too many spoilers, but one of my main characters, Roland, for instance, when they're in Camelot, him and Oliver have a fight. He storms off and gets mauled by a bear, like absolutely to the point, like he virtually dies. And so the reason for that scene is to show Excalibur's power, because in my book, Excalibur is a sword that can heal, which is actually part of the lore from Excalibur itself. So he gets mauled by a bear, and the way the swords work is that both brothers have to be emotionally in tandem. They have to be able to understand each other. They don't have to agree. They don't have to be at all. They just have to understand the process that the other's going through. So when he gets mauled by a bear, he has to understand why his brother made the decision he made that caused their fight. And so the whole scene was to fuel that idea that, yes, we can actually, I have it tattooed on my arm. One of the quotes for the book is malice of the heart is not permitted. Anger is permitted, but you can't hate each point to fuel the way the story goes and how it worked.
That's awesome. I love the quote, and you're talking about the tattoo. I love that perspective, and I like what you're.
Look, I know my face is pretty. I know I take a lot of attention, but I mean, that's just dirty, Tiger. It's just dirty.
Pretty sure I didn't touch anything. But no, you are gorgeous. You're gorgeous. You and your flowing locks and that real man beard. So so what I was trying to get at is I love how you talked about, even the part about the mauling of the bear, it advanced the story, and it was telling the story of the sword. It was explaining kind of the magic system, if you will, right? So it had purpose. So with maybe it's different with yours because it's Arthurian and some of the world building is maybe already a little bit established. But what do you think about and I don't know if you've read like Brandon Sanderson or Steven Erikson or some of these people who have done super massive, vast, and expansive world building, and their books are massive, and they can go on about why the weather is the way it is.
Right.
And when they're doing it, technically from a plot or character standpoint, it might not be advancing it in a linear manner,
Right.
but all of that it's building the world. What are your thoughts on that?
So my thesis for my class is it is a secondary epic fantasy or secondary high fantasy in a world, and just to go on the world building, the moon is shaped like a gourd. So you got the bottom part and you got the small part up here, and it sits tilted like this, and the moon rotates. So you've got the large half that'll face the earth, and then it'll swap, and then the small half will face too. So I spent probably 6 months developing a world where the weather patterns and the cities and the people are affected simply by the way the moon shifts and the way it rotates. What that would do, and I did a lot of research on what would happen if the moon was bigger, what would happen if the moon was smaller, how would it affect the tides and the way the world works. And so it is one of those things, and I struggle with it because I'm so proud of this world. I'm proud of all the elements I've put into it, but you have to find a way to build the world and your characters without the massive info dumping.
Absolutely.
So I think having a secondary world like that, where you've got aspects of it that do weigh, because in my world, the world is based on a belief that the large moon is a god, the small moon is a god, but then as a whole, it is also a god. So it's three separate gods that each kind of deal with one thing, and
Okay.
that in and of itself develops the characters and their belief system. So when the large moon is facing, it gives a lot of light, and so it's the god of goodness. When the small, or sorry, it's the god of darkness because it illuminates during the night, which allows thieves and murderers to see more of what they're doing. Then when the small moon is out, there's less light. They can't see what they're doing, and it's the god of goodness. So the world building shapes your character's mindset because that's us as people, and I had to think on it in that level. Us as people are built around the way our world works. I think that deals a lot with how our personalities develop, and you can see that when you've got more people who are maybe potentially a bit more bitter about the winter because they can't stand the cold or something like that, or people who are a bit more joyous when they're living in warmer climates because they're able to get out more, they're able to experience more. And so I think that world building definitely plays on your character building and how that works out.
That's awesome. I've had a lot of fun with it. My Demon Hunters trilogy, it's it's basically the mortal realm is sandwiched right between the heavens and the nine
Right.
hells. And so what happens is periodically rifts open and either demonic forces can enter the mortal realm or heavenly forces. And when
Right.
that happens, there's a release of power, and anybody who's in the vicinity basically gains new powers.
Right.
And but there's an entire belief system that's established throughout the world and the churches and everything based on whether the people are evil or good, depending upon how the event happens. And there's prejudices, biases, and you
Right.
know, a lot of crazy beliefs and practices based on just the world that they live in and the events that can happen there. So, I mean, it's a whole lot of fun. So that's really cool. I definitely would love to hear more about this, gourd shaped moon world story. If you get into that more and you write more about it, because I love Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archives. I'm way behind on the
Mhm.
books, but I absolutely love. Have you read through those yet?
I have not. It's on my, so right now, my wife is pointing at herself because my wife has read every book known to man. She's the big reader.
Okay.
In our family. She reads all the time, and so I actually wasn't reading as much. The last thing I read I had to read a book for class, and so I read Dead Things by Stephen Blackmore, mainly because I've had this itch to write a necromancer, and so his was a big recommendation for necromancers. So I read his, and
Cool.
right now I'm actually reading January Rain, who is an author I met on TikTok. She's a paranormal romance author, and I kind of saw one of her TikToks, and we agreed to do a switch. And so I'm currently reading her book now.
Oh, okay.
And basically, it's kind of research for my own romance because I've never read anything like this before. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. But as I decide, I've had enough of this muse, and I decide to kick her to the side, or whatever I'm going to do with her. My plan is to go back and read more of stuff like Sanderson, and mainly too something I didn't know. Not in any way to brag because I hate when people do this. I haven't found much of anybody who kind of matches my writing style to a degree. And then when I was reading a little excerpt of Sanderson, it was almost like I was reading a little bit of my own stuff. And so it
Oh,
wasn't
wow.
it wasn't exact, obviously, but we have a lot of similarities between the two of us. So I definitely want to go and read his stuff because his what's his big series? What's the
The
oh
Stormlight
good
Archives is his really large one.
yeah. Is that
Mistborn is
the
really. Oh, go ahead.
I can't remember. I might be. Okay, yeah, that's the one I'm thinking about. Okay, because I do plan to go read that one.
Well, it's really cool because, when you're talking about the moon and the weather and everything, so in the Stormlight Archives, no spoilers here, but the world of Roshar it deals with these things that are called high storms. So
Yeah,
there's a perpetual storm that circles the globe every so many hours, and it's very violent, it's very dangerous. So the entire world, the ecosystem, the creatures, the shelters, everything is based on this predicated weather system where
right,
everybody in the world faces the harshest possible weathers every day. And
right,
so it affects everything. It affects how they travel, their economy, the creatures, the fauna, like even the plants. They have shells. They have like exoskeletons and stuff
wow,
because they had to adapt to live in
right,
that environment. And then when you get into the magic system, it's already built into the world. So it's like
right.
you're just uncovering layer after layer. And the books are gigantic, but from a world building perspective, it's one of the best series I've ever read. So
And
it's just they're
see, and that
huge.
kind of it's interesting because you bring that up because the way the my moons work is 10,000 years ago, which is what's in the lore of this book. And this one will come out at some point. I don't know. It's going to be my master's thesis, so I mean, a part of me is thinking it'll stay indie, but this particular program gets a lot of attention from agents and publishing houses too. So I mean, I don't know what my future looks like, but 10,000 years ago in the world, the small moon and the large moon collided and they stuck together. And so when that happened, fragments of the moon was shot down to Earth, and these fragments contained like magical abilities. And so that was where, and when that happened, there were certain animals that evolved from the event horizon. So there's a certain collection of animals that are all evolved. There's even actually one, two civilizations that evolved from the event horizon as well. So there was just a collection of things that all took place because this celestial event happened. So when you mentioned the storms that really created the world and the magic system, I totally I see that 100% because I planned the same thing without knowing anything about Sanderson and the way his magic system worked. That's what I based the whole world building around, was this one thing, and what would this one thing do, and
Yeah.
that's where I evolved my world off of.
That is incredible. Anytime like sometimes for me when I'm thinking about what I want to write, I kind of think in themes, not necessarily literary themes, but like even aesthetic themes. My brain kind of works in pictures, and like moon based themes are something that are really fascinating to me and
Right.
interesting that I want to explore. So it piques my interest, and then you start talking about all of the other the cause and then all the other effects that come with that's really interesting. So I'll definitely be looking forward to keeping track of that. Now I know that we're over on time here. I guess one of the last questions I have for you, and well, two questions. So the next one is, we've talked a lot about different things that you've read, everything from the Arthurian tales to the Three Musketeers, classics, all over the place. If you had to name like, two different maybe authors or individual books that are probably the largest inspiration, is there any that you could probably point to as maybe the two or even three most impactful to you?
As soon as you say that, my wife gets up to go find books off of our bookshelf. So, which is actually the two that I was thinking about. So when I was in high school, which actually kind of fueled my interest in Egyptian mythology, Rick Riordan, who is a middle grade based writer,
Yeah.
he wrote the Kane Chronicles, and it's
Yep.
one of the less like Percy Jackson, the Lightning Thief. That's the big thing that everybody knows him for. Well, the Kane Chronicles was the Egyptian version of that. So a lot of what I wrote as far as my Egyptian mythology has a lot to do with that. And there's an interesting part in it that's always kind of sat with me. I am a Christian, so I do have backgrounds in that. There's a part in the Kane Chronicles where the protagonists are descendants from Egyptian magicians. So if you've ever seen The Prince of Egypt,
Yep.
the two guys who are dancing by the power of Ra, they're from the Egyptian magician house. And so they're descended from there. And they walk through this temple area, and it's showing events that the magicians have done. They come to this event that where the magicians face an unknown magician who turns a rod into a serpent and eats their serpents. And
Yep.
it's, the biblical reverence of Moses. And it's always stuck with me the way that he did that. He's, that bringing in that Christian aspect of it. And I don't know if Riordan's a Christian. I don't know, but I thought it was interesting the way he brought that in, because in the Bible, Moses' snake, he does eat the magician's snake. I mean,
Yeah.
so that was a really big part that sat with me. So Rick Riordan's a big one for me, because I love the Kane Chronicles. I loved Percy Jackson. And then the other one is Christopher Paolini, his Inheritance saga.
Yep.
Obviously dragons. I love dragons. Most people do love dragons. And so I read those in high school, read those nonstop, back to back to back. Was a big fan of those. Hated the way it ended. It was horrible. I don't know if you've ever read them, but
No, my brother loved him when he was younger, but he doesn't love him now. And it was kind of the same thing.
Yep. And I mean, it was just, I didn't like the way it ended. It wasn't fantastic for me. As far as being an adult goes, because my reading has only recently picked up. Like I said, I took a long hiatus off of reading. Stephen Blackmore's Dead Things was fantastic. I loved it. And it was first person, and I'm not typically a first person reader. I'm usually a third person. But his was really good because he was like a city detective beat cop kind of attitude mixed with the bringing the dead back to life. So it was really good. I really enjoyed it. And outside of that, that's really the extent of my adult reading. It's sad to say I don't read as much as I should, unless it's my own book, because we all know as authors we read our own books like 50 million times when we're going through them. But hopefully, as like I said, I'm reading January's book. And Eliza is currently, she just put out a necromancer book that she said she'll send me when it's done. So hopefully as time goes, I'll get a lot more reading under my belt. It's just finding it, not really finding the time, but just stop making excuses to sit down and read like I should.
I hear you, man. Being a grown up with the wife and the kids and job and church and every other responsibility that I have, if I'm not listening to an audiobook, I'm probably not reading. That's like 90% of my reading these days. And it's like when I'm cutting the grass or when I'm exercising, I'm listening to an audiobook or my commute. So I feel you. For the Indie Fantasy Challenge this summer, I definitely have some paperbacks that I bought from a few different authors, and I'll try to read through those, but I never get very many done each summer. I'm kind of a handicap to my team, but I'm happy to cheer on everybody else. But yeah, I'm kind of the same way. And I have a number of large series that I got halfway through and I had to stop because I'm like, all I'm reading is one author for a year. And so like Steven Erickson's book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen is incredible. But after like 6,000 page books in a row, I was like, I need to go listen to something else for a little while. So I have a whole bunch of things that I haven't seen to completion. But I think it's more important that you and I are writing than,
It is,
if we
and
have to, if we have to pick.
what I try to tell myself. The majority of my writing is done in the only place I get peace. And for anybody watching, don't judge me. Don't judge me because I'm just saying I literally feel my wife's eyes on me, so don't judge me. The only place I get peace in my house with a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a year-old that just learned to crawl is my bathroom. So I read a lot in my bathroom, and my mother-in-law gets on me all the time. She's like, those books, they have your particles on them, right? And I'm like, look, I don't want to hear it. I'm like, this is where I get peace. Okay, I get it. It might not be the most sanitary thing. It is paper. It's very fibrous, but you know what? It's what I got. Okay, so just so anybody who's judging me, I feel it. I feel the judgment. Chill.
Dude, I'm not judging you, but the bathroom isn't even a safe place in my house because if I'm in there for more than like 3 minutes, my amazing wife is like, "Are you okay in there?" So I know better. I don't even try. I don't even bring reading material, so I already know better. But she
You
will
got to
let me go
develop.
and cut the grass for an hour though, so that
You
works.
got to develop the same thing I've developed. Like when someone, like, because our bathroom door doesn't have a lock on it, because if something happens to my kids while I'm in there, I want to be able to get to them. So when someone comes in the bathroom, if I'm in the bathroom, it's just like immediate Spartan kick. Like, just
Oh yeah.
leave me alone. This is my time. You go play. You leave me alone. Immediate
Yep.
Spartan kick. I'm not. There's no hesitation. None. But of course, my wife, a lot like you, she'll come to the door. She's like, "Are you okay? Have you fallen in?
Yep.
Are you all right?" Yes, I'm just trying to get to the end of this chapter. She's like, "Well, that's a long chapter." I know.
Oh, that's so much too relatable. So, oh man, this has been a whole lot of fun. We do have a few viewers here. Janelle Filto, I hope I said her name right. When
Yep.
you were talking about, I think it was the Kane Chronicles that you were talking about. She was just saying that really sounded awesome. She thought that was really cool. We have a few other viewers here, and I'm not sure how many you have on your side. But before we get off tonight, I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to tell people, other than TikTok, where can they find you?
I'm on Amazon. Both of my books are currently on KU.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm on Facebook. I have my group. I have a group. The Iron Scribe Legion is on Facebook.
Okay.
Janelle is part of it. She actually just joined. She was the author who I did the interview with earlier this week.
Oh, okay.
She's my new Canadian friend who she also wrote an Egyptian fantasy. So I was talking to her about it earlier this week. But I'm on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter because I feel like Twitter is a waste of time for indie
100%.
authors. I
100%.
mean, and people don't understand that when you talk to them about it. They said, "Well, Twitter's like the hub for people." No, Twitter is the hub for people who are already established and are celebrities and have 1 million books out. For indie
Dude,
authors, we don't get the time of day on Twitter.
I have a mini Twitter soapbox. So back in like 2011 or something like that, when I was still working on my first book, oh, and Janelle's saying you're doing great tonight, by the way. So awesome. I love the support that we have in the community. So when
Yeah.
I was on Twitter early on, like 2011, 2012, I built up to like 17,000 followers. I was like hardcore on
Wow.
Twitter every day, building a following, getting traffic to my webpage, getting visibility, Kickstarter, all of that stuff. And then like within it was good for, I don't know, like a year and a half, 2 years. And then like something changed, and like all of the people that were actively following just left. So like
Really?
even though I had
Wow.
17,000 followers, it was a whole bunch of vacated accounts. And then like I've gone in there over the past couple of years, every now and then I can't even get like a single like or single retweet, even with the right hashtags, even with
Yep.
like, hey, I'm giving away thousands of copies of this book, no strings attached. And so I've just been like, I have an account out there, but Twitter, no, I don't touch it.
It's desolate. There's an author. He's really a really prominent indie author, Mark Dawson from the UK. He
Yep.
writes thrillers, and he does a lot of classes on how to sell your indie books and how to deal with social media.
Yep.
And I remember he released one time that actually said Twitter is a waste of your time. He said, "Do not." He said Twitter is dead. There for an indie author, it is just not. It's not a place for us. It's great for traditional authors. Like I know Stephen King is on there a lot. Rowling was on there a lot. But
Yep.
as far as for indie authors, you're just hollering out into empty space. I mean, you're
It
better off on
didn't used
TikTok.
to be that way, which is the bummer. I mean, my initial following when I released my debut novel
Yeah,
many years ago, that's where I got all my initial fans. That's where I got my
really.
Kickstarter supporters. I mean, my initial fan base, my beta readers, they all came from Twitter. But it's
Wow.
just not what it used to be. And I was so bummed. But I mean, TikTok has been way better than even Twitter was back in the day. So
what I love so much about TikTok, and you mentioned a minute ago, the author community on TikTok is so insanely strong. And
Yes.
I plan on making a TikTok about it pretty soon because I've seen a few going around now where your algorithm has geared you towards authors when you want to be geared towards readers. And I understand that, but at the same time, like I love my author friends that I've made on TikTok, like you and Janelle, January. Like I love my author friends because the fact is that the more author friends you make, the more connections you make, the more you get exposure. Like, and that's the whole point of me doing my interviews is I want people to see indie authors. I want to do my part.
Yeah.
Lindsay, gosh, and she killed me right now. Lindsay Royer, who does the book review flash mob, she is
Okay.
big on indie support, and I've gotten really close to her, and we've shared a lot, and I've sent her some merchandise and stuff like that. The community as a whole, and I've told people before, no matter what I've faced through my life, the author community is insane to me because we're not in competition with each other. We do nothing but build each other up. Every chance we get, we're
Right.
trying to lift the other authors up. Even though we're, in a way, we're all trying to sell books. We're all trying. I think it might have been you who made a TikTok. It was either you or someone else about how your goal is to get to the top of someone's TBR list. That's you want to bypass everybody else and get to the top. So even though in some sense you are in a little bit of a competition, but at the same time, there's plenty of books to go around. There's plenty of readers to go around. And we all know that. And we're all literally lifting each other up through the whole thing. And it is baffling to me. I mean, it really leaves me astounded at how great the community as a whole is.
It's one thing about this industry that I really love is the fact that, like you said, we're really not in competition. Now, I get it.
Yeah.
If your cover is not as good as the cover next to your book on Amazon, there's a competition aspect. If your blurb is not as good, if your reviews,
Right.
like I get all that. But the people who come into the author community and have the mindset that they're competing against everybody else, they either quickly adjust their perspective or they don't do well. Right.
Yep. They fall flat.
I don't know if you're in the 20 to 50K books group on Facebook, and it's all
I
about,
am now.
the rising tide lifts all ships, right? So how do we help
Yep.
each other? And, I think we see a lot of that here on TikTok. A lot of the most active people who engage with my content on TikTok, like 50% of them are other authors, and they're not even the same
Yep.
genre. Right. So, I mean,
Yep.
I love the community here, and I've only been on TikTok for like not even 2 months yet, and it's been great.
Yep, that's something that they really stress in my master's program, which I wasn't expecting this. And I have an advantage over some of my other fellow students in the fact that, I've been published for 2 years. I've been in this industry just kind of floating and learning for about 10 years now. So when I come into my master's program, a lot of my fellow students are just blown away about how much I know and how much I've experienced. And one of the things they focus on in the program is being a part of your community and uplifting your community and making those connections. And I was just kind of baffled. I was like, I'm amazed at that even at this level with people who aren't published, people who hasn't been in the industry, they're doing exactly that. They're forcing it. I mean, essentially, they're forcing it down your throat to know your success is going to be based on how well you lift up other authors, how you engage with the author community. So if you get that mindset now before you publish, you're bound to see some level of success. And I love that. I love that even at a school setting, you know.
Yeah, I think that reminds me. Is it maybe the Zig Ziglar who had the quote that said, talking about success, help other people accomplish their dreams and their goals, and you'll find that you accomplish yours in the process. That's not
Yep.
how he says it, but that's the gist of it. And I think that that's the right attitude. And I'm a believer as well. I'm a Christian as well. So that's just kind of who I am as a person, anyways. So
Right.
I mean, I think that we have a great opportunity to serve and uplift other people, and there's fruit that comes with that, right? So I think that's pretty cool, and
Exactly.
this community has been great so far. I know we're getting ready to wrap up here, but Janelle had left another comment. She said 100% agree with what you guys are saying. I've been told that TikTok and Instagram are where to go. I don't know if you want to chime in on that before we close. I've been on Instagram for a few years. Instagram has never really taken off for me. I've seen little spurts here and there, but it never really took off, even with content tailored to TikTok, even with or Instagram, even with me, cross posting my stuff from TikTok to IG. It's never really gotten off the ground. So, but there are some authors. I think it also depends on genre. It's very genre specific. I think romance authors are absolutely killing it on IG
They do
because
great
you can do
everywhere.
well. That's certainly true, isn't it? But I think that they're still killing it on IG. But if I put something out there, I'm lucky if I get 4 or 5 likes and maybe a share, maybe a comment here or there.
Yep.
But yeah, TikTok has breathed life back into my the business side of my writing, at least.
I agree wholeheartedly. I was doing some cross posting with Instagram myself, and wasn't getting a whole lot of engagement. I've also found it's really hard to find like minded people on Instagram. Like Facebook is tailor made for finding groups and getting in with people who are very like minded. So when I hear people say, "Well, Facebook is more for an older generation," I mean, you've got straight like the indie fantasy authors that we're both a part of. I mean, that group is tailor made for us, and there's
Yep.
almost 10,000 people in there, and that whole group is centered around that one concept. So while Facebook might be for an older generation, I just don't think Instagram doesn't serve my purposes. TikTok and Facebook have been great.
So I got another comment here. Keith Thomas Laspaluto. I probably butchered his name. He said, I struggle to be seen, but I still enjoy the community. I will be seen once I write more books. Yeah, that's definitely a very real part of the business. The best way to promote your books is to write another book. Everybody's probably tired of hearing that, but it just proves to be true. And just being consistent. So if you're not being seen, you can certainly look at what other people in your particular genre are doing, Keith. There's whether it's courses out there. I've taken some courses on TikTok. I'm also looking at what trends are running and then what other authors are doing well in my genre, but trying to be genuine through the midst of all that and just being consistent, continuing to work on your craft, continuing to release books. And if it's one a year or one every 2 years, whatever that is for you, just being consistent, it'll take care of itself. It's just most of us want that overnight success. I know I've been wanting overnight success now for, 11, 12 years, and it hasn't happened yet. So
Yeah.
just keep going though. One other comment here, Janelle said, there's a lot of struggles to hit the audience, but once you hit the sweet spot, it's beneficial. Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking about on TikTok. I mean, it applies everywhere.
Instagram. I think she's talking about on Instagram. She found the way to
Oh,
do it. And if you did it on Instagram, massive kudos to you, because for me, Instagram's difficult. I don't know why, but I've never been able to really crack the code that is Instagram. And I got on TikTok probably a couple months ago, and like you, like I got in and it was almost instantaneous how quickly I was able to get a following, But
yeah.
Instagram's a different story altogether. I couldn't break into Instagram.
Yeah, it is. Even with, all the hashtag usage and third-party programs to identify the right hashtags. I've done all that in the past, and it really wasn't worth the investment for me. But there are people who are making a living off it. So
Oh
obviously
yeah,
it works for some folks. I haven't cracked the code.
yeah,
Um,
me either.
but
Me either.
cool, man. Well, it's almost 9:30 now. I've absolutely had a blast, and I thought this was a lot of fun
Me
hanging out
too.
with my
Me too.
handsome guest. So I thought this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on live with me, talking
Oh
about
yeah,
books and
anytime.
writing. Um, it's at the Iron Scribe is the handle,
Right,
right? Yeah, I can see it there.
right.
So if you're not already following Caleb, go ahead and give him a follow here on TikTok. Do you have a website where people can sign up
I
for a
do.
newsletter or anything like that?
I do. It's calebnkelly.com. And if you sign up for the newsletter, you get a free prequel series to my Egyptian mythology book that's coming out. It's 3 short stories that you get for free that deal with a character that's coming in that new series later on. So if you join, you get that for free, and then you get I've got a blog that I no longer post on that I do horrible on, but that's
You
there,
got
and
one of those too?
yeah, yes. Oh my gosh. I think it's been dead since like 2019. It's it's horrible. I was just doing like I called it my writer rambles because it was just whatever topic I felt like writing on. Because George R. Martin was like, one of the best things you can do is write a blog. He said blogs get a lot of attention. And yeah, it didn't do nothing. I couldn't keep up with it.
Well,
It was
I will say that the blogosphere has definitely changed in the last 10 years. It was a
right.
really hot thing when I first got into writing, and that's a story for another time, but it was a really hot thing, and I was sure that I was going to make a fortune off blogging somehow. And yeah, that certainly didn't happen. But I will say that on my author website, the few articles that I have written are still bringing in traffic every day and every
Really?
month
Wow.
for stuff that I've written 1, 2, 3 years ago. Now, it's
Right.
not big numbers to brag about, but I do have a steady stream of traffic that Google sends my way because of SEO and page rankings and all that stuff for certain topics that I've written about in the past.
Right.
So there is some long-term value, but I don't keep up on it either.
Yeah, mine's been dead for years. I should probably either just scrap it or attempt to do something or at the very least put a nice beautiful link that links them to my TikTok where I post every day. So I don't know, maybe that's the best thing to do. My wife is the other half of my whole operation, and I always am a little hesitant about telling people this because I've caught some flack. They're like, "Oh, well, you don't do it on your own." But my wife handles she does the formatting for my books. She's my developmental editor. She runs my website. I mean, she's fantastic. So no, I don't do it on my own. I'm just the beautiful face in front of the keyboard, and she handles everything else. But
That is one of the dumber things that I've heard in a long time.
man,
I would be so glad. Most of us would be happy to be in a position to pay people to do the things we don't like to do. Why would anybody say that that's a negative? That's ignorant.
man,
So,
as soon as I said this, I was talking to somebody back and forth, and we was having a great conversation. And as soon as I hit that and told them that how much my wife does, I mean, instantly dropped the conversation. I mean, it was, oh, so you don't do all the same stuff the rest of us do, and she dropped the conversation immediately.
I think you're probably better off that you're not having conversations with that individual anymore. That's just I'm just going to go out on a limb there.
Yeah, I was blown away. I was like, and so that's why I'm so hesitant to tell people how much my wife does, because from front cover to back cover, she's done everything but write the story herself. I mean, she's done all the formatting and she doesn't do the covers, but she's done all the rest of it. And she's very active on my posts, and she watches all my lives. She's and my best supporter. But as soon as I said that, man, it was mind blowing because it was done like it was instantaneous, like done.
And I don't even get that. Well, I guess maybe the ego tells them that
The
they're
only thing I can
better
figure
or something.
out.
I don't know. That's silliness. My wife does not like books, and she doesn't like fantasy either. But she is my biggest supporter, and she has been doing a lot of beta reading and
Right.
some light editing before I go to the editor for me. On some of my more recent books, and it is such a help. I wish I could get her interested enough to do more. That would be incredible. That's awesome that your wife is able to support you like that.
I will tell you this: be careful about it, because while she is my biggest supporter, she's also my biggest critic. So
Sure.
she does some developmental editing. She's a freelance developmental editor for folks on Fiverr. So when I give her my stuff, she has to figure out how to address it, not like one of her clients, because she's a little blunt, and I'm like, look, you can't talk to me that way, okay? I'm like, we sleep in the same bed, okay? You can't talk to me like these other people. I deserve something different. And so she hit me with something one time that kind of hit me the wrong way. I was like, look, I got thick skin, but when you say that to me, it's a totally different ballgame. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like that, you scar me. Okay. And I'm like, you hurt my feelings. Right. And so she's trying to learn now how to say things that are constructive and very clienty, but also to her husband. And she struggles.
Oh, that's hilarious.
She's like, I'm sorry, that's how I talk to I'm not your client. I'm like, I mean, I am, but I'm not. I'm like, so.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, dude, this has been a lot of fun.
You have to come on mine when I get around to it. You got to come on mine, definitely.
Okay, yeah, we'll just have to look at the calendars and figure that out. And yeah, I think that would be fun. So this has been a ton of fun. Thank your wife for letting us hang out tonight and have some book chat.
She's been listening. She's been busting a gut off on the side there.
I can hear her laughing. It's cool.
Yes, I know. We went to see Twilight one time in theater, and she started laughing, and I sank down into the seat. It was Ted. We saw Ted, and she started laughing, and her laugh is horrible. Her laugh is awful. And so everybody in the theater started laughing at her instead of the movie. And you ain't never seen like 50 sets of eyes turn on a 4.5-foot woman so quickly in your life. And I was like, I'm not with her. We're not together. She's a hobo I picked up on the way here. I'm like, and she called me after the movie. She's like, why did you do that to me? She's like, people were looking at us. I was like, no, they was looking at you. They wasn't looking at me. They was looking wholly at you. I was like, do you know how you laughter?
Had nothing to do with the laughter whatsoever.
I was like, she's cackling over there in the background. She knows all about it. Yeah, that's right. She had to walk into another room so you wouldn't hear her. She cackled, man. It doesn't matter what it's about. If we watch something funny, I mean, I do. I'm like, I'll scoot off away from her. I'll be like, okay, you're on your own. I'm like, you.
So the comedies are best left to be watched at home.
Yes, I can't go out with her because I will sit like the row behind her. I like pat her on the shoulder. I'm like, you're okay. You just do you, but I'm here, but I'm not with you. Okay. We're not together. I wish I was making it up, but it's so true. It's so beyond true.
That's hilarious. I can't go to the movies with my wife, not because she'll laugh, but because she won't stop talking the whole time. So if I'm gonna sit there and she's gonna talk the entire movie, I might as well do it at home and pay a third of the price.
Okay, does your wife ruin the movie for you? Like, does she figure stuff out?
Okay, she can. Yeah.
So I'm a millennial. I grew up on Pokemon, and Detective Pikachu came out. Whenever it came out, and it come out on a streaming service, and I was watching it, and she's sitting there watching it with me, and 5 minutes into the movie, she goes, "I know what this movie's about. This is what it's about." And I'm not joking. An hour and a half later, she called it 5 minutes into the movie. I'm like, well, you shut up. I was like, never, ever talk about a movie ever again. You ruined my childhood in 5 minutes. Okay. Like,
if it's a movie where there's a mystery to solve or something to unravel, I'm guilty of that too. So I can't act like I'm any better. I'm terrible about it, but it doesn't matter what type of movie it is. My wife has to be the commentary the entire time, and it's amazing. So Keith said, my wife hates going to the mobile because other people have say in the seats. Mobile, what's that? Oh, the movies. Oh, okay. Autocorrect got you there, I think. Yeah, hates going to movies because other people have say in the seats. Yep, I can understand that.
Well, mine's the exact same way. Hers is just the laugh. Now, credit, if she was busy talking the whole time too, wait, because other people have sat in the seats. Wait, is she a germaphobe? Oh, that's a totally different ballgame. That's a whole nother thing.
You guys didn't see that, me drinking and totally missing my mouth.
I did. I just didn't want to say anything because I was be like, you know what? He covered it really good. I'm like, he's got this.
No, it's good. It's good. Laugh at my expense. Get your wife to cackle at me. It'll be great.
I was like, that was clean, so I'm just gonna let it go. I was like, he recovered on that great, so I'm just gonna,
it's all good.
Keith,
hey,
I have to know.
I'm the butt of the joke, it's okay.
I have to know if Keith's wife is like a germaphobe. Is that why she doesn't like sitting in the seats? Keith, you take a long time to type, my guy. I need answers.
So you're able to see what Keith's typing?
I can see Keith and Janelle too. Okay, Janelle says she's a spoiler. Look, Janelle, we'll fight. I'm telling you, you're like my wife because she spoils stuff too. And when she hit me with Detective PG, look, and Janelle, you're a Pokemon fan. We've talked about it. If she ruined Detective Pikachu for me, all right? Like, would you stop laughing so loud?
Let me put this water down before I spill it again.
Oh, Keith's at work. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to call you out when you was at work.
Well, at least you're doing what you're supposed to at work, Keith. We appreciate you.
I feel bad. I feel bad now. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to call you out. Would you shut up? Oh my God.
Oh, this is fun. I've got to go. I've got to tuck kids into bed and all that and listen to my wife laugh.
Oh my gosh.
Dude,
It
this was
is
a lot
the
of
yuck
fun.
factor.
Yuck,
Oh, gosh.
yuck factor.
See,
Just
Janelle,
have to know. Yeah.
we would
Yep.
fight. Like, just you can't be ruining my childhood like that. Like she slept on the couch. Like I scorned her. I was like, don't talk to me. Don't no, we're not.
Y'all have a great
Oh my
time.
God.
Thanks for checking in tonight. I've got to
Yes,
go,
sir.
and I've got to clean myself up. Have a good night, everybody.
Okay. Bye, Tiger. Bye, guys.